Well, folks, I regret to inform you, but I think it's pretty much confirmed at this point. Barnes and Barris were right again. And I guess I should take a little bit of credit because out of all the many myriad of predictions about this case, I tended to agree and latch onto the predictions of Barnes and Barris. And so obviously, I didn't make it up. I'm not going to take credit for saying this is going to be a hung jury, which, as each day passes, that's more and more likely. Now, the good news is, at least, it seems that there is a majority, perhaps an overwhelming majority of people on the jury who, from the start, wanted to acquit Kyle Rittenhouse on all charges. And from what we understand from, the rumors that we're hearing, which is the best we can do, there are one or two holdouts. White women, mask-clad, people who obviously should have been struck from the jury just based on the fact that they came in wearing masks. I hate to sound that callous about it, but it's obvious. The kind of person who's wearing their mask into jury duty when it's not required is not somebody who's going to be very favorable to Kyle Rittenhouse. These are people who do as they're told, to the ends of the earth. If CNN told them to jump off a bridge, they'd do it. We know that's how these people think. And so that kind of personality is going to find the actions of Kyle Rittenhouse incomprehensible. And it doesn't matter, whether his self-defense was justified legally or not. Someone like that just can't sign their name to acquit him, because they will look at that as an endorsement of not only his behavior, but his very existence. And so I see no way how this archetype of juror is going to ever, come down off of the ledge and acquit Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, hopefully, she's not so strong and persuasive as to get the other jurors, 11 to 12 of them, 10 to 11 of them, onto her side. I think it's probably a lucky thing that there are as many pro-Kyle jurors as there, seems to be. And I'm being careful with my words here because I don't want to overstate the quality of the information that we're getting about the jury deliberations. I mean, it's not like we have some NBC News reporter who is, snapping pictures of these people and doxing them and giving us detailed pictures or profiles of these folks. Although, we almost did get that. Because apparently, someone who NBC describes as a freelancer was commissioned by a MSNBC producer to go and stalk the jurors and follow the jury bus. Obviously, if you're being followed and stalked by the media, who potentially could expose your identity, which this is not the first time in recent history that the mainstream media has tried to dox private citizens, ordinary people who did not do things that they liked, and threatened to dox them in an attempt to manipulate them and to get them to do what the media wanted. I think the most famous case is, or at least the most striking example of this, was the guy who made that WWE meme of Trump body slamming a person who had, CNN's logo for a face. CNN didn't like that meme. CNN tracked the guy down. He said, "We've got your name. We know where you work. We're going to tell your boss. We're going to ask them, why do you employ this bigot who creates hate speech unless you write a written apology and you promise never to do this again?" And so the guy wrote a long apology, posted it on Reddit, and deleted his account. And MSNBC, I think pretty obviously, wants a similar sort of result here. But instead of an apology, what they want is a guilty verdict. When you combine that with the fact that there is a mob of people gathering outside of the courthouse who are insistent that the jury come to the correct verdict, it's hard to really take this whole process seriously. Because in a case where jury intimidation is present, pushing jurors towards one verdict or another, it's pretty hard it's pretty hard to accept the juror's verdict. Because even if the jurors don't find Kyle guilty on all counts, you might end up with a situation like this where there's a hung jury. Because let's say, hey, a lot of them do want to acquit despite all the pressure from the media, from the rioters, from other people in their community who, after the trial, will find out that they were jurors and, perhaps will retaliate by firing them from their jobs or by boycotting their businesses. Maybe the last couple holdouts would not be holding out so strongly if there wasn't such a strong social desirability bias in favor of finding Kyle guilty. So I don't see, now again, I hope I'm wrong on this. I hope I have to eat crow. I hope I have to eat my hat. But I do not know no number of days of deliberation is going to change this. You have people who are diametrically opposed when it comes to this case. It's highly politicized. And if you've got one or two people who are very strongly, politically opposed to Kyle Rittenhouse and everything he represents in their mind, they will never bring themselves to convict him. They think that he should burn in the pits of hell. They think that he should fry in the electric chair. They would pull the switch themselves, and then they would happily go on CNN for an interview with Anderson Cooper and describe the joy and the gratification that they felt at flipping the switch and electrocuting Kyle Rittenhouse to death. These are the kinds of people that Mark Richards and Corey Sharafazi, apparently, I think Sharafazi sounds much better, but apparently his name is Corey Sharafazi. These are the people who they let on the jury. And that's inexcusable. Because they turned down help from a team of body language experts that, yes, was organized by Robert Barnes, but Robert Barnes is not a body language expert. He called up a few people. It would have been, in his words and other people's words, a jury selection dream team. And I don't think, after seeing the results of Richards and Sharafazi's jury selection, it's hard for me to poo-poo the idea that what Barnes had in mind wouldn't have been astronomically better. Because somebody like Richard Barris, I have a lot of faith in his data. He has proven himself repeatedly. He has the data to select what kinds of people, based on their behaviors, based on what the things they consume, based on the magazines they subscribe to, based on, not party registration, because I don't think they have that in Wisconsin, but based on a number of factors, maybe political donations, who would have been bad jurors that you want to stay away from. Because in a case where you have somebody as innocent as Kyle is, you don't need people who are biased against you to begin with. If you just find someone who's neutral, you're going to win. You just need to avoid the people who are rabidly against you, who want you dead. And Kyle's problem is that his lawyers let people onto the jury who have a vendetta against him and want him dead. It's as simple as that. You don't need to sugarcoat this. These women are, I'm resisting the urge to call them evil, because I don't know them personally. I don't know their motivations. But after hearing all of the evidence, to still be so thoroughly committed to this boy's demise, because life in prison is a death sentence. It's death in prison. It's not life in prison. You don't live in prison. You're in prison until you die. So that's a death sentence. I mean, a lot of people die in prison before they're even executed anyway. So, I mean, there's not a huge difference between life in prison and, the death penalty. But frankly, at the end of the day, what the jurors say shouldn't really matter, because there have been so many issues in this case which should have triggered a mistrial, both in some cases with prejudice, in some cases without prejudice. Like in the case of this today with the MSNBC reporter, potentially intimidating the jury, potentially trying to dox the jury. This should trigger a mistrial without prejudice. Jury contamination is a big deal. It's a very big deal. You can't have a jury trial and a jury verdict if the jurors don't feel free to, just vote based on the facts of the situation. If they have to worry about their safety, about their well-being, then, the jury system is unusable. And so this is the third or fourth instance which should have triggered a mistrial. Now, the other two, I'll go over them briefly. The one was the video file being shared with the defense last Friday, I think it was, right at the end of the trial. The prosecution snuck in this video, which has become the linchpin of their argument, which apparently is of great interest to the jurors in their deliberation. The one holdout, or two holdouts, they are banking on this video that was brought in by which, I mean, you can't see anything in it. But the prosecutors argued, oh, you can see Rittenhouse raising his gun and pointing it at somebody, and that triggered the whole situation. And so everything that happened after that was not self-defense, because everyone just attacked Rittenhouse because he pointed his gun at somebody. And besides that being a ludicrous argument, even based off of the HD footage provided by the state, they did not give the defense that footage ahead of time. What they gave the defense was a 212p image, less than 240p, which was even more useless. I mean, sure, you can't see anything in the 840p image, but you definitely can't see anything in the 212p image. And so that put the state at a disadvantage because they only had time ahead of time to review that extremely low-res video. And considering that Handbrake was off the computer, which the state was using to handle evidence, it would seem that Krause was lying when he said, oh, I know nothing about video compression. I don't know how that could have happened. Who could have compressed the video? It must have been a technical screw-up on the part of the defense. It must be because she has an Android, even though I emailed it to her and she never opened it on her phone. So this, at the very least, even if it was an accident, should be a mistrial without prejudice. If it was intentional, which the judge could inquire more to figure out the details behind this, hold a hearing, put Krause under oath, like he suggested, then it should be dismissed with prejudice, if the prosecutors were acting, with malice intent here. And then going back before that, I think there were actually two things before this, but there was at least one that I remember, which was the Fifth Amendment violation. Which to me, I mean, that was so clear. I'm not a lawyer, and I saw that as cut and dry. You can't continue on prosecuting someone after you violate their Fifth Amendment rights. You've ruined the whole trial, and that was the prosecutor's fault. The prosecutors chose to do that, so it should just be dismissed with prejudice. Kyle should go free. But the judge keeps letting all these things go because he's hoping, hey, if I can just get through and let the jury, reach their verdict, the jury. I mean, this is such a slam dunk case, because the judge is looking at it. I believe he was the DA of Kenosha County. He said in the past he's looking at this as a former DA, and he's saying this is such a terrible case. There's no way that that Binger, little Binger, who's not even the DA, the big DA did not want to take this case because he knows that it's a terrible case, and so he's letting Binger take it, and there's no way Binger's going to win. He's making all these missteps, and so I'm going to let him go, even though he's doing all these terrible things, just because I want to get to the jury verdict so that it doesn't come back on me. that I let Rittenhouse off. I want the jurors to do it and to prove everyone that, we can have a jury trial and that everything can go okay. And so he's letting Binger get away with all this stuff. Well, Binger might be getting away with this stuff just enough times, and just enough to actually stop Kyle from being fully acquitted. And so rather than getting the full acquittals that I think the judge has been expecting, we're going to end up with a hung jury and a mistrial without prejudice. Whereas this should have been dismissed last week or the week before with prejudice. And I think it potentially may have been had the defense not been so arrogant as to think that they could, thinking the same way as the judge, that, oh, well, gee, if this goes to the jury, this is such an easy case, this is such a slam dunk that, we'll just win. They shouldn't have thought that way, because they didn't do proper jury selection. We know that now. It's confirmed. Or else this would have come back within an hour or 2 hours, and there would have been full acquittals. But we're going on day 3 of deliberations. No, we're on day 3 of deliberations. What am I talking about? And there's no end in sight. There's not going to be an end. And so now the result is Rittenhouse is going to have to go through another trial, and potentially he's going to put his life on the line a second time. And hopefully he fires Richards, but I mean, who knows? He's not going to be allowed to hire Barnes. He might end up with somebody worse. So that's a terrible outcome. And it's not over yet. But, there have been all these off-ramps where the trial could have gone in different directions. All these chances for a mistrial, with or without prejudice. Now we're going to end up with a hung jury after all this. Kyle's going to have a big fat bill to pay to Richards, Sharafacy, and Wisco. And then he's going to find himself charged again. Unless Binger is so disgraced that he doesn't do it, but I don't think Binger will learn from this. If I'm Binger and I get off on this with just a simple mistrial without prejudice, because of a hung jury, I would let that rest on my laurels and then sort of use the specter of this case and say, hey, look, I tried, and I didn't lose, but even though I didn't win, but I don't. Who knows? I think there's a very good chance, because of how high profile this is, that Binger comes right back and tries him again. So unfortunately, I think we're probably going to have this experience of watching this whole trial one more time. And hopefully the right people are able to help Kyle then. But for now, the chance that this ends here, those chances are getting slimmer and slimmer. There's less. Now, the good news is there's almost no chance that he gets guilty across the board, that he gets convicted of murder. I don't think hopefully he doesn't get convicted of anything. Hopefully, for right now, the worst case scenario is a hung jury. There's still a slim possibility of a split verdict, but I think that considering the number of people that would supposedly are holdouts, I think that the polarization on this case is strong enough to where you're not going to have split verdicts. People are so polarized, either they think he's totally guilty or totally innocent. So really, this charade is going to carry on for as long as the judge wants. Eventually, the judge is going to have to concede and say, you know what, the jury's not going to reach a verdict, and therefore, I declare a mistrial. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.